Quit your whining. You're useless to us, my mother barked, as I trembled with a high temperature on the sofa. She had used the money for food on my sister's day at a salon. You need to leave. This is my home, I told her. Later that evening, I switched out the locks and placed their belongings outdoors. Hey everyone, original poster here. I'm a 28-year-old man. 3 years back, after my kind grandfather died, I received his place. It's a simple, solid home on a calm street. Nothing fancy, but it felt warm. He was practically my parent growing up, and I was closer to him than anyone. As a child, I'd stay there for days, surrounded by the scent of his aftershave, his jazz records playing, and the feeling of being truly looked after. So when it became mine, I promised to maintain it the way he did. Last year, my mother and younger sister fell on hard times and asked if they could live with me temporarily. I agreed right away. I thought it would be for a short while, a couple of months, tops. Relatives look out for each other, don't they? That short while stretched to over 18 months. What was meant to be brief turned into a permanent takeover. My mother acted like the house was hers immediately. She moved furniture, took down my grandfather's pictures and put up her own decorations, all without a word. She said she was refreshing the space. My sister was just as bad. Loud music all night, using my streaming accounts, buying food with my money. She left messes everywhere, cosmetics in the bathroom, clothes on the floor, plates in the sink. Whenever I tried to talk about rules or pitching in, I was either guilt-tripped by my mom about her difficult life or made fun of by my sister for being too strict. You should be grateful we're here, my mother said once when I asked her to pick up her shoes. Many don't have family to rely on. Rely on? They hadn't paid a cent for bills, food, or anything. I was struggling with freelance computer jobs, my savings disappearing, while they lived for free. Then, last week, I came down with a severe flu. Fever, shaking, a terrible throat, feeling lightheaded. I was so weak. I tried to work from the couch. By the third day, I was exhausted, bundled up and sweating on the living room sofa because my sister had commandeered my room for a photo shoot. I weakly asked my mother if she could pick up some simple food when she went out. She barely glanced from her phone. Yeah, sure, she said, then left with my sister, both dressed for a night out. I slept fitfully and woke up hungry that evening to the sound of them laughing in the kitchen. Nothing to eat. I got up and asked if she'd bought any groceries. She looked at me blankly. Oh no, we didn't get food. We went to the spa instead. Your sister had a tough week and needed to unwind. A spa? She had taken the last of my cash for the month, money I'd specifically said was for food, and spent it on treatments for my sister. All while I was ill and hungry on the couch. I was stunned. Dizzy, I tried to stay calm and asked how she could do that. That's when she lost her temper. Quit your whining. You're useless to us, she spat, as if I was the problem. That was my breaking point. I had done everything for them. Shared my home. Covered all the costs. I'd been patient and silent through the disrespect. And they saw me as a nuisance in my own property. I looked straight at her and stated, this is my home. You're leaving. She stared, then laughed harshly. You won't manage without me. You'll come begging for us to return. You're pitiful. My sister added with a sneer, good luck with the bills. You're the broke one, not us. They walked off, treating it as a joke, certain I wouldn't act. But I meant it. That night, while they slept, I packed all their things into their original bags and boxes. I wasn't destructive. I placed everything neatly by the front door, including their chargers and pillows. Then, I carefully changed the locks. At 6 a.m., I texted them be out by 8. After that, I'll call the police for trespassing. I waited on the front steps, still terribly sick, sipping tea made with the last honey. My head throbbed, but my mind had never been clearer. At 7:55, my mother came down, shouting and swearing, calling me heartless and ungrateful, saying my grandfather would be ashamed. My sister followed, finally quiet, dragging her suitcases with a dark look. I didn't engage. I didn't shout. I just stood silently and watched them go. They left. I cut all contact that night, blocked numbers, locked down my profiles, ended the family chat. Sitting in the sudden quiet, still unwell, I felt alone. It wasn't peaceful yet. It felt like a battle had ended. But sometimes, the other side doesn't know the war is over. A week later, a letter came in the mail. No address on it, but I recognized the handwriting. I hadn't seen the last of it. The envelope held 3 pages of blame and guilt. She said I had abandoned my family, betrayed those who gave me everything, that my grandfather would be horrified. She called me selfish, cruel, and unstable for reacting to just a little sickness. She finished by saying they would explore legal options to get a part of the house. I cycled between anger and bitter laughter. It was their same old pattern: cross a line, distort the truth, then play the victim when faced with results. The legal threat worried me, though. I spent a day reviewing all the documents, the will, the deed. Fortunately, it was very clear. He left the house only to me. He'd always said, you're the only one I trust with this place. The fallout continued. Relatives I rarely heard from started calling and messaging, accusing me of being a terrible son. An aunt called me a brat. A cousin questioned how I could do this to my mother. A friend of my mom's lectured me about respecting parents. My mother and sister had spread their own story, portraying me as a crazy, selfish person who kicked out his helpful family. It bothered me, not because I valued their approval, but because it was a lifelong pattern. My mother always made herself the victim. If I cried after she hit me as a kid, I provoked her. When I wanted to live with my dad at 13, I was ungrateful. When I got a job at 16, I was pulling away from the family. She always rewrote history. Now she was doing it again. I had a choice: stay silent and let them control the story or tell my side. I chose to speak. I made a detailed post online, explaining everything: their move-in, my financial support, their lack of contribution, the disrespect, and the final straw with the spa money while I was sick. I concluded family shouldn't require you to sacrifice your dignity, peace, and health so others avoid responsibility. My door is closed for good. The response surprised me. A few people unfollowed me. Some made unclear comments. But many stayed quiet, and several messaged me privately: old friends, even a cousin saying they'd seen similar behavior from my mom. One cousin said she did the same after your dad died. I'm glad someone finally said it. It was a release. For the first time, I understood I wasn't the problem. I wasn't cold or broken. I had been enduring a cycle nobody else acknowledged. The emotional impact remained. Some nights the silence was heavy. Passing my sister's old, now empty room, I'd feel a pang, not of regret, but of sadness. Not for losing them, but for never truly having the family I needed. One evening, I found an old photo album of my grandfather's. Pictures of him holding me, his garden, the living room before my mom changed it. Inside the cover, in his unsteady writing, it said, "This house is for peace, for honesty, for second chances." I cried reading that. I realized I had done what he wanted. I offered second chances. I tried to keep the peace. But when it came to the hard truth, I chose honesty, even though it meant walking away from my only known family. A few weeks later, a letter came from my sister. No return address again. She wrote that she didn't agree with how things ended, but maybe they had overstayed. It wasn't a true apology, but it was the nearest to taking responsibility I'd ever gotten from either. I didn't write back. I had found my own peace, not with them, but within myself. Since then, I've been putting my life back together. I found a stable remote job. I repainted the living room and rehung my grandfather's photos. I planted tomatoes in the yard like he used to. He always said they were less trouble than people. For the first time as an adult, the house truly feels like my home. I don't know if my mother and sister will ever understand what they did. They might keep telling their version. They might even believe it. But it doesn't affect me anymore. I'm done being a character in their story. Now, I'm writing my own. It starts with a quiet house, a secure door, and the soft sound of jazz playing from the stereo.